Hello everybody, and welcome to the Magical New Beginnings podcast. My name is Sharon King, and I'm super excited to be talking to Dr. Melissa Raymond today. Melissa, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I feel very honoured.
And I am really looking forward to deep diving into the work that you are doing with children that have eczema, and also, am I right in thinking lung issues as well? Those two are very
Asthma
close.
and allergies, yeah, all linked.
All very much linked. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, Melissa, tell us a little bit about yourself, and yeah, tell us about who you are now and how you got into doing or specializing in this eczema work.
Well, that's a long story, so we'll try and keep it short. So I am an eczema and inflammation coach now, working with parents of kids with eczema and allergies and asthma, as well as adults with eczema and topical steroid withdrawal. How I got here, I have been a physio working in the hospital system for over 20 years. I have been a researcher. I've done my PhD in physio. I have got two beautiful boys, and 14 years ago, my firstborn, developed eczema at the age of 4 months old, right when I was in the start of my PhD. And we went through the typical approach of, GP, steroids, didn't work, back to the GP, off to the dermatologist, back to the GP, more medication, off to the allergist. So it was just this cycle of nobody talking to each other as far as specialists go. My concerns around the medication that we were given and the warnings in the pamphlet that you get with the medication, I was actively told to not look into because of the cancer links in children, and that there was no link between diet and skin, or diet and health. And I was like, oh, I feel like there's probably a little bit of untruth to that. So I, naturally being a fixer of things, wanted to fix my son. And I could clearly see that going the conventional route wasn't going to give me any joy or answers. And I didn't want my son to be on a strict elimination diet for the rest of his life. At that point, I was eating five foods that he was not reacting to when I was breastfeeding him. I wanted him to be able to go and have a pizza with his mates as a teenager. I didn't want wet dressings or hospital stays or steroids for life. So I was like, well, we're not going to go down that route. That can be plan Z, but my plan A, like last resort, my plan A was to figure out why he had eczema, because no one could tell me other than, oh, it's really normal in kids who are 4 months old. And I'm like, normal. Common doesn't equal normal. Common doesn't equal healthy just because it's so common. So I went down the route of diets and gut health, and working with lots of amazing health professionals, lots of not so amazing health professionals. And when we got it right with the gut health, his eczema cleared completely in 2 months. And he hasn't had it since, and he's 14 now. So I kind of filed that away, tried to finish the rest of my PhD alongside the eczema research I was doing. But it just kept coming up where I was seeing other families around having eczema and also in the same place as me, but not having the resources that I had, or the scientific brain to, or scientific knowledge of how to unpack a research article and say, oh, that was funded by Big Pharma. That's probably a little bit biased. Or how to interpret studies when there's quite a lot of gaps in there. So after I finished my PhD, I thought I'd like something else to do. So I thought, why not teach other parents how to help their kids with eczema and allergies? And so I stumbled upon you a few years ago. Somehow, of course, the universe brought us together on my online summit, Healthy Mums, Healthy Families. and learnt about the work that you did. And I felt that this was the really big, I'm not even going to call it a piece of the puzzle. It's like 75%, 85% of the work I do now is from the teachings of you, of what I've learned from you. And it makes the biggest shifts really quickly. And it's so much easier than trying to slog hard on changing diet in a 3-year-old or a 7-year-old who doesn't want to eat that food.
Yeah.
So my whole approach now has really changed in the last 12 months. And I'm loving seeing the results in my kids and the adults as well. Yeah, loving it.
Awesome. So it's really interesting that you said that it started, how old was it? 4 months old?
4 months
The
old,
son was
yes.
4 months old, and you started your PhD at that time as well?
I think the year before.
Okay. Okay. Not a direct link then, but
Not a
usually,
direct link, but conception wise or stress wise, there's pieces of the puzzle there that I can trace back, I think, as well.
absolutely, absolutely. So anything to do with the skin, as we know in traditional Chinese medicine, is to do with separation and grief. And the skin and the lungs are very closely linked. So that's why when you're working with skin issues, that quite often people get eczema and asthma together. It's something that happens at the same time, but it can also be influenced by when you're in utero, if the mother experiences some form of loss or grief, especially around the time when that digestive system is all starting to be put together as well, because those little bugs in our stomach that are digesting, they have a consciousness as well. And if the mother is highly stressed, then she's going to have very stressed gut biome going on there too, which is then going to be passed to the baby. So I love, I just love the work that we're both doing with the really early life traumas and how that is associated with what's going on with the body.
Yes, and it's really interesting hearing people's birth stories and the separation at birth, which is unfortunately really, really common, even if it's just, half an hour, to a baby who's been connected innately to you for 9 months. That half an hour probably feels like forever to them, with them not knowing what's going on. So it's questions. They are questions that I ask of my clients when I start with them. Tell me from the beginning.
Yes, from conception right the way
Yes.
through to the birth, and then maybe mum or after birth may go back to work, and then there's that separation in that way as well. So there's a whole timeline, very early life timeline, that you really need to look at. So tell us a little bit about some of your successes that you've had.
Well, yes, I love talking about my clients. And the proof is in the pudding, because I'd never done this work that I do now with my previous clients. And a lot of them got great results without this work, but it was just hard going. And so now I start with the quantum field tapping, or I start with heal your birth work. It depends on, where people are at. But what I see, I usually work with the parents of a young child or a teenager. Often teenagers aren't really on board or could care less about this kind of work. But when I work with the parent, and I've worked with a few dads as well who have been amazing, like the mums, the eczema starts to shift in the child. And we haven't made any changes to the diet of the child or supporting lymphatics or anything like that. And that's what people often ask me. But what did you do? What dietary changes did you make? Nothing. It's just this quantum field work is just so powerful. So one of my clients, I worked with both parents, and he, from one session to the next, so only one session, the first session he had just the worst little eczema cheeks that kids often do, and he was between 1 and 2 years old. And the next session he popped on, and I said, Zoom's got a filter sometimes and it dampens down the red, but does his cheeks look clear to me? And the parents went, oh yeah, they're completely clear. And they had just been doing the same really good, clean diet, nothing processed. They were doing everything right. And that was the only thing that we changed, and worked on the relationship with the mum and her mother and safety around childhood. So that was just one session. And another client that I had is in her 20s, she's in her 20s. And she has had eczema for at least a decade, if not longer. She developed eczema worse again around the birth of her daughter, and it was a pretty traumatic birth. When she came to me, she had been going through topical steroid withdrawal for a couple of months. And I don't know if you've seen pictures of people with topical steroid withdrawal, but it's worse than the eczema itself. So her skin, her arms were just flaking off. Her whole body was just flaking off in sheets. She had red, raw, open wounds on her elbow, and just so red, angry forearms, and also in other places. So she not only had the eczema that she was going through, the topical steroid withdrawal, she was an insomniac. She just couldn't sleep. She just woke up every morning, just really looking in the mirror and just not being happy with her life, and just didn't go out. So we did a couple of sessions, and actually my client, she's Spanish, so we did it through an interpreter, a friend to interpret. And within 2 sessions, her skin had gone from flaky to normal, still red, still itchy, but much, much improved. And she couldn't remember how bad it was. And I had to send her photos of the first time before working together of, this is how bad it was. And she said it's still a little bit red. A couple of sessions later, the skin was just back to her normal colour, normal smoothness, a little bit itchy still, but most importantly, she could sleep. She could sleep at night. Mm-hmm. She felt so grateful, and I saw her smile for the first time after the 3rd session, which was, I said, what's going on with you? You're looking so happy. And she said, I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful. And the confidence that she got, because her skin was better, but also her mood, her stress was so much reduced, that she actually skipped a couple of sessions because she was like, I'm out with my friends. So that she got her life back in a really quick amount of time. And I'm not saying that that will happen as quickly for everyone, because we all have different layers and different things going on in our lives and generationally. But for this lady who just thought that this was the next 2 years of her life, because topical steroid withdrawal often takes years and years to resolve, if it does resolve at all. So just,
Wow.
I feel as excited as they do when I jump on a call and I'm like, oh, you look amazing. And just the energy shift in their life force, I guess, is just profound.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And so many people are starting to realize now, let's reframe it this way around, they're starting to see the connection between our life experiences and what happens within our body, the diseases, the disorders, the stuff that goes on. Yes, we have the normal need for detoxing and eating clean as much as we can, especially nowadays. But there is always an emotional link to this, and you can also say a mental link in the belief system as well. Like, I'm never going to get better from this. The skin is also a big organ of our body that breathes, but it's also about protection as well. So if you're feeling like, and it always amazes me at different parts of the body that the eczema shows up on. So like the face is, like, this is your very public, the first thing that people see and look at is your face. So if you've got all of this horrible redness and flaky skin on your face, then it's just the emotions that must be going along with that, but it's about, not feeling protected, not feeling safe when people look at you.
Yeah,
Safe
absolutely.
to be seen.
So many emotions that come up, and there's often a lot of anger, and there's a lot of shame. Hopelessness are big ones that come up, as well as that obviously not feeling safe is the background for a lot of the clients that I see. It comes up pretty much immediately, and I'm just every time I'm like, oh gosh, this is amazing, and it's so, I can't explain, but it's being able to change someone's life like this, who is living their life on hold and in this level of fear that perhaps they're not even aware of. It's that subconscious emotions in the background where that's just causing so much of that fight or flight freeze response, which contributes to inflammation. We know that. And that lack of awareness, because we are very much taught to not listen to our bodies. We're very much taught to suppress emotions, or maybe we don't know how to express our emotions at the time, or it's not safe enough to, so they get repressed and stored in the body. But being able to listen to our body and say, okay, eczema is a symptom. It's a sign of the body saying, hey, I need a hand here. Come, please help me.
Yes.
Rather than something to be suppressed superficially. So it's changing this whole paradigm, which I'm so excited to be able to do for people with eczema, to say, let's listen. We don't have to listen for too long either. It doesn't have to be, we have to suffer the eczema forever. We have to listen for months and months. But we can see the benefit of eczema, if there can be a benefit, is that you can see it really clearly. And so for parents with babies with eczema, they can see that something's going on and then seek advice.
Sorry, Melissa, how would you explain to somebody about listening to your eczema, listening to your symptoms? What would you say to people to?
I typically explain that eczema is a symptom. So yes, it is a condition, but it's a group of symptoms that show that the body's in inflammation. And so we can treat it topically to suppress the inflammation on the skin. But it's like you've got a fire in a house, right? And the gas is on, the burner's on, and then it gets out of control. So you could pretend it's not there and shut the door and then look from the outside, there's nothing wrong. But inside, there's this inferno happening. So what we need to do, if you want lasting relief, is to turn the gas off at the source. And so that's one way that I explain this approach, that listening to your body, we can say thank you to the body for being so clever, for showing me that there's something that needs to be addressed. And it's similar to, I used to get migraines, headaches. And so instead of popping a pill, which I might have 15 years ago, I now say, okay, this is a presentation of my body saying, okay, I've stored stress somewhere. It's in my head or it's in my shoulders. Let's try and work it out to relieve the root cause of my migraines rather than just suppressing the symptoms. So we do have a choice, and sometimes the suppression of symptoms is needed in that time. Sometimes we need it to function. Sometimes it's life or death, and we do absolutely need some symptom management. So I'm not saying don't go down the symptom management route, but there's also things that we can do to address any condition at the root cause.
Okay. Would you use like the EFT tapping, for instance, to kind of tune into what the emotion is, where the energy is in the body, and where this originated from?
Yeah, absolutely. I love EFT tapping, and I use it with I use a lot of color therapy too as well to weave in, because I find that kind of speeds up the process really. When you need it to speed up, that's a really beautiful way to do it. And sometimes tapping on a migraine is not what you want to be doing, even though sometimes I will do it in my mind. I find the color therapy really helpful for myself with migraines too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So tuning into the pain, describing it. If the pain had a color, what color would it be? What's the emotion in there? What's the shape of the energy? And then what color you need to bring in to lift and lighten that energy. Yeah.
Beautiful,
Awesome.
beautiful. And I like to take note of the colors too, my scientific brain, not just for myself with the migraines, but from an eczema perspective. To see, I use a lot of color therapy with my clients, as well as alongside the other tools. I'm just interested in what colors people come into for the initial complaint, and then what colors they come into for choosing the color to lift and lighten. I'm tracking that because obviously colors have a lot of meaning as well. But I'll let you know in about 12 months' time when I've gathered enough data.
I love it. I love how you've taken this work and you're kind of really doing the science behind it, because when I do it, it's just like, yeah, it works, it's great. And I understand the psychology of color, so that helps too. And that's the scientific part of it, if you like, that I need it, but I don't keep track of it in the way that you do. So I'm really happy that you're doing that, because somebody needs to.
Oh yes, it's my little scientific brain coming in. It's a curiosity. There may be nothing to it. There may be something to it. It may be something that certain color combinations result in quicker outcomes or better results or something like that, or there may be nothing to it. So, but if I don't track it,
You're not going to know.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And the pain, quite often regularly shows up as murky or dull colors.
Yes.
Whereas the healing color is always like really vibrant. All the color that you end up with, it ends up being very bright and vibrant.
Yeah, lots of sky blues actually, I'm noticing. Lots of sky blues. Yeah.
Sky blue is a popular one. I love it.
Indeed.
And that I've never had eczema, but I've had a few skin rashes that have, like shingles and things like that. So I can imagine if I tune into the energy of that, it would be very red and angry and frustrated and irritable, and yeah, there'd be a lot of that going.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I've tried a few different routes to connect in with the eczema and how best to tackle it, how best to approach it to help people clear that inflammation and clear the energy around it. And so sometimes I do ask them what they feel when they think about their child's eczema, what comes up for them. But then sometimes we just end up in a completely different space and we just go with the client. I just go with the client with where they're heading, and that seems to guide us beautifully.
Awesome. And what have you discovered about the lung conditions like asthma and things like that? Are they the same? Do they seem to go back to the same causes, or is it something different?
So I don't always ask my clients exactly what's going on at the time, because sometimes it can be too much. It might be a first session that I'm working with a client with that something quite traumatic comes up. We're always dissociated, so we can really the client can distance themselves, so they're not re-traumatizing themselves in the process, and we can pull out at any time. But very similar along sometimes it's that ancestral path. So where an egg I always explain it to my clients before we start. Sometimes we are working on things in this current life. Sometimes it might be a generational issue that's coming up and representing. Sometimes it could be a past life. You don't need to believe in past lives, but sometimes it could be a past life. It could be the way that your brain is trying to process the information. But regardless of where it is coming from, if it's this life, generationally, or past life, or in our mind, it still gets cleared. So the naming of something, it actually doesn't matter. But I've often gone back to the generational lines on the mother's and the father's side to be able to clear that energy. And as you would know, we're an egg in our mother's ovaries when she's a fetus in our maternal grandmother's womb, which I always share with my clients because I think that's mind-blowing. But just generationally being present, half of us being present, as old as our mum is, or older because conception, right, is just fascinating. But also then you can understand that any trauma that our maternal grandmother went through, or maternal grandfather went through at that time, we were there. So it can really impact us as well as we were present. So it's really, really, really fascinating, and you can be so creative with this process too. It's not all doom, gloom, serious, tragedy, traumatic stress and things like that. We can actually make it really light. And
fun.
It's really light and fun. And it's not, I'm facilitating, as you would know, where the client gets to be their own healer, which is just
the client, the therapist for their younger self, or the younger baby when they were pregnant. So client for themselves when they were pregnant, client for the baby inside, also working with the grandmother. Yeah, so it's very powerful stuff, and it really plugs into that quantum field, quantum physics idea that we are all connected. But the connection between, I think, mother and child is the strongest because you spend that 9 months growing inside your mother. So the mother what I find is the mother tends to have more influence over the baby stroke child when she's doing the work. But the father's also connected as well. So, because, we're 50% made up of egg and 50% made up of our father's sperm. So, and that sperm is still much connected to the father, even after it's no longer in the father's body. So the energetic side of it is also very fascinating.
So fascinating. I love working with both parents because although I see more changes working with the mum on the child, there's still a lot of frustration and hopelessness and anger and powerlessness in the father as well. And being able to help them just that down where they can go, actually, things are going to be okay. We've got this. I feel really confident about the future. I'm not so connected, not disconnected, but I'm not so attached to how is my child this minute? Oh, it's a flare up. It's a disaster. Oh, how are they now? Oh, they're better. Okay, I can relax. Because we often are, and I was, every time my child had a flare up, I was like this. And every time the day was good, I was like, okay, all right, but what's it going to be in an hour? So literally you're riding this really high emotional roller coaster, whereas this work can just put them on this kind of even sailing boat, which just changes their whole outlook. And of course that will affect the child in a positive way because they don't have two stressed out of their minds parents. They've got two parents who are really confident and calm and know that they've got this. So I like the dynamic where the fathers are happy to do this work or curious. I love doing that too.
Yeah, it's so important, especially, if mum's stressed out, worried about the child, then she's going to be more snappy or short-tempered with her partner, and it just that relationship between mum and dad is so important for how the child responds to the world as well, because parents are your world when you are a child. You know, they are a representation of your world. And how I like to describe it to people is, you imagine like mum's got a, I don't know, let's just say she's got a pink energy field and dad's got a blue energy field, but the child is living within the mix of those energy fields. So when the pink and the blue come together and make the purple, that's the bubble of energy that the child lives in. So if mum's like flashing red because she's, you know, angry or upset, and, you know, dad's like flashing, I don't know, let's say black because he's in a bad mood and he doesn't want to come home because, you know, his wife partner is like very stressed, then, you know, that energy is what the child picks up. And it's not always conscious, but unconsciously we all know, we can all remember. If you think back to your mother's face when she was angry, you know, you would like instantly that pictures in your
Yeah, I
mind.
can feel it.
Yes. So, but it's not just, and this links back to the autonomic nervous system when you're looking at the social part of the autonomic nervous system in the face. This is why the face is so important as well, to read the social cues. But like, you know, that's how children check in. Am I safe? But it's not, you can also feel it as well energetically. You know, you can feel your mum coming, and if she was in a bad mood or dad was in a bad mood, you would feel it before they even came into the room. So to be able to work with mum and dad, that means you're changing the color of the energy within the environment that the child is living in. So that's going to calm the child down when the parents calm down.
Yeah, beautiful. I love how you've explained that so perfectly. And it's also, I like to think, changing generational patterns in parenting too, because of certain ways that some people have been parented, they often carry that forward. And so this work can really change that for the better, which is another beautiful, there's so many, it's not just about the eczema, is it? It's about an opportunity to like heal future generations, which I love, because I can see in Ben, my oldest, you know, he doesn't have to have all that life of eczema and what that would have done to his nervous system.
Yes.
And
not
how
only his system,
life.
but any children that he may have as well, because that would be passed on to them.
Yeah, absolutely. The ripple effect is far more than I initially thought.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So every time you change something for your child or you change something for yourself, it not only affects yourself, but it also affects the future generation.
Yeah, it's really, really beautiful. And because eczema, allergies, and asthma are all interlinked, it's called the allergy march in the medical field, that someone has eczema, they're likely to be diagnosed with food allergies or intolerances around the same time. And then a few years later, potentially asthma. So Ben had all three as well. So he no longer has asthma either. And I believe at the time for him, because this was 10 to 14 years ago, as he got those diagnoses and then lost them, we did a lot of gut healing work to help, which links into the autonomic nervous system because of the vagus nerve, to be able to calm that down and calm his responses down. So just improving his gut health alone, as well as all this energetic work that I've done with him over the last 5 years, he's been a fabulous guinea pig, is just, beautiful for him to take those tools forward, as well as what he has learned about healthy eating and the effect of the environment. He's a teenager, so he doesn't agree with all the things that I say, and that's fine. But he knows, and he's grown up in a house where I've learned all this stuff, and I've learned these beautiful tools, and he'll carry them forward thinking that they are really great to be able to help with health for any health condition.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just thinking of the teenager I wrote about in my book, Heal Your Birth, Heal Your Life, where he had eczema, down the spine, either side of his spine. And when I worked with his mum, I mean, he was 17, so he wasn't a young child, he was 17. And we worked on the time when they were separated after birth, and his eczema went away and never came back again. So it can be something as, you know, simple as that. And that was literally just one session, just working on that separation after birth. And another one that's coming to mind, which I can't kind of get out of my mind now, so I need to share it. So the adults used to get really bad eczema on kind of like this area here, just at the top of the shoulders, and also just on the sacrum, on the base of the spine.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like when you looked at it was like a handprint here and here. And you think about how many people hold their babies like this, and which is a very natural way of holding your baby, you know, or your crossed arms and you've got a hand in those two specific places. And I didn't say anything to him at all, but he took himself back, or he went back in time, and he found that when he was a baby, I mean, his mum and dad used to argue a lot all through his childhood, but specifically because he had a lot of trouble sleeping as a baby. Mum was getting very tired and very stressed, and she would walk up and down and she would be screaming at his father. He later found out that this was true. He didn't know this happened, but he saw it in the quantum field when we went back. And she used to walk up and down holding him in her arms, but screaming at the father to do something. You know, don't just lay there sleeping, get out of bed, and, you know, you've got to do something. And the baby's obviously screaming as well. So we went in and we did some work and calmed the baby down, calmed the mother down, calmed the father down in that subconscious memory that he had. And literally within weeks, the eczema just started to melt away.
It's really, it's so powerful. And I think when I put a post up in our Facebook group, one of the ones that you ran, just that I love this, and I'm always surprised, but then I'm not surprised.
Yes, yes.
So it's just becoming the norm that these things happen, and it doesn't change my level of excitement at all.
No,
but
it never does.
People have had eczema for decades and decades and decades. And then one of my clients recently we just did one session a couple of weeks ago. She'd had eczema for many, many years. And I texted her afterwards, like, is everything okay? How's your eczema? She's like, oh, it's nearly gone.
Yes.
What do you mean it's nearly gone? That's amazing. That's amazing.
They call that the apex effect, where people come in with a certain condition and you do work with them with, well, whatever it is, you work with them, that condition disappears, and then it's like they almost forget that they had it. They just start getting on with life. And if you don't like check in with them and go, well, how are you doing with X, Y, and Z? It's like, oh yeah, no, that went ages ago. And it's just like, you know, would have been nice to know, but also great. And some people go, well, what problem? I never had that problem. It's like, well, yes, you did, because it's in my notes. So
yes, I'm big on people taking photos for themselves and sending them to me, not so I need to use them or anything for advertising purposes, unless they want me to, but for their own, so I can send them back to them when they say, oh, it's still a bit this, or it's not a problem. Well, this is what you were like 4 weeks ago, just so you know, and they can see the improvement. But it's not just the apex for the health condition, but the some of my clients who have had extremely traumatic childhoods, when we've come up to do a Heal Your Birth session, so we've healed a lot of their relationships, so we can do a Heal Your Birth session. They've been, because this particular client in my mind had a pretty traumatic birth of her daughter, and she didn't want to re-go through that. And so I said, that's absolutely fine. We don't re-traumatize. We're very, very separate. However, it's like what we did last week when we went back to your 17-year-old self or your 10-year-old self. And she said, no, didn't have any problems. Like, she's fine. She's grateful. She's very happy. Yes, but last week it wasn't quite that way. No, she's fine. So it's beautiful to be able to do that for the health condition, but also to heal that so much so that it just doesn't register as ever having been a problem.
Beautiful. Melissa, we could talk on this subject forever.
I know.
And ever. And ever. Do you have anything final that you would like to share with people, and also let people know how they can get in contact with you if they have issues themselves or with their children?
Sure. I think coming back into your body and listening to what your body is telling you, whether it is eczema, whether it's a headache, whether it's something else that doesn't feel right to you, listen in, go and seek help. And you don't have to do this on your own. There's so many amazing people out there that know how to do this beautiful work. Love hearing all your stories, Sharon, and the thousands of people that you have helped over the years. So it doesn't have to be a struggle. It doesn't have to be so hard every day. But the first step is to listen to your body and then reach out.
Yeah. And try not to leave it as the last resort.
Agreed. Agreed. Sometimes people have to be pushed to that point, but I find, particularly from an eczema perspective, the quickest result, actually, across the board with quantum, it doesn't really matter. I can't find a pattern of who's going to have really quick effects or who's going to just take a bit longer. But the window of opportunity for a beautiful childhood is as early as you can. So if that's your newborn, if that is a 6-month-old, that's when I would be looking, because it just changes your relationship with your child. If every time they cry or every time you have to put the moisturizer on, they're suffering, there's often some resentment there. There's often some anger directed towards the child. And this is from some of my clients who have felt guilty about this then. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be in what I call the cycle of despair. It can change really quickly. And then you can just forget about like it ever happened, like many people do. So, yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. So how can people contact you?
I'm trying to be more present on Instagram. So Your Journey to Healing Eczema, or Facebook, Your Journey to Healing with Melissa.
Okay. Awesome. And you are in Australia as well, so
I'm based in Australia, down the bottom in Melbourne, and so I do work with clients all over the world. So I've had clients in South America, Canada, USA, New Zealand, and Australia all throughout. So as long as our time zones will match up, that will work. But it's just a pleasure to be able to help people all throughout with this technology that we have these days.
Beautiful. And I'll put the links below this video as well, so you can just click on Melissa's Facebook or her Instagram. No website yet?
yourjourneytohealing.net. Yes.
Okay.
A little under construction, but hopefully all fixed by the time this goes live.
All right, awesome. So I'll put all those details underneath. So Melissa, you just inspire me. I love listening to all your successes, and yeah, just love the way that you approach all of this, and also love your scientific mind too. So thank you for being you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure chatting with you as always.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care, everybody.